Thanks for joining us on our introductory podcast, The Dental Insiders. Today we're going to give you a sneak peek into what Dental Insiders will be all about and why we're doing this. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matthew.
And we're here to pump you.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that.
I don't think we're doing it. So let's cut to the chase and get to why we're here. So what are we going to do here on Dental Insiders?
Well, what we're going to do is create something that unique, that is, I think listeners will find interesting and informative in the dental industry. Michael and I have years and years of experience in this industry.
Yeah, I think we both have close to 15 years in the dental industry.
We do, and if my math is right, that adds up to 30 years. And well, we've done lots of different things, as a matter of fact, all across the board in the dental industry. We've really covered a lot of bases. Michael, you've worked at several different equipment manufacturers, some of the biggest and best in the industry.
Some of the smallest
and not so
and striving
awesome
to be the best.
Yep, and you've worked at lab technology companies, and you actually currently have a dental industry blog for dentist team members and industry people.
And anyone who wants to read it, really. And Matthew, you, young man, have your own agency that really helps dentists and technologies connect to one another. And this is, I find fascinating. I think we're going to get into it a little bit later. You actually wrote your own book. You know, a few pictures, but like words and stuff. You wrote your own book
words
for dentists on branding. And you speak about that topic, branding, all around the country.
Yes, sir. So add that all up, and I'd say we're pretty well connected in this industry. One might even say we're dental insiders.
I would say we're dental insiders, and that's why we named the podcast, drum roll please, the Dental Insiders.
Yep.
So here's the concept. Every month, we're going to invite people that we think are visionaries in the dental industry to share their stories, their insights, and lessons they've learned along the way.
Yep, that sounds good. So we're going to have lots of different people. We're going to have clinicians, key opinion leaders, industry gurus, manufacturers of cutting-edge technology, and more. The goal is to make this podcast interesting to anyone and everyone in the dental industry. A few of our guests lined up for future podcasts are Dr. Lou Schumann, Dr. Scott Parker, we've got a HIPAA compliance guru, and the always interesting and insightful Paul Feuerstein, and so much more. We really have a plethora of guests lined up.
I mean, that's quite a heavy-hitting lineup, and as you're listing off these potential guests, I'm starting to think this might have to be a weekly podcast.
Well, let's walk before we run on this one. I'm not even sure this is recording, and there's no guarantee anyone's going to listen to this.
I don't even know if this mic is on.
It probably isn't. So let's just let's do this one and see where it goes.
Okay, but to kick things off today, it's just us.
That's right.
Just the two of us,
yeah.
You and I. And so, I mentioned your book earlier. So again, I said, as someone who, I write a blog, you mentioned that. But to me, a fellow writer, it's very impressive that you wrote a book.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, the book is called Branding in Practice. It is it's a book, probably if I were to give you just a quick synopsis of it, it's meant for dental practices, for dentists,
yeah.
and the whole practice. And it's to get them to try to see the practice more like a consumer brand, see themselves, the dentist, the practitioner, and the practice itself more like a consumer brand. So I don't know, it seems to make sense to me. It's kind of where we're going as a society. Strong brands, we know strong brands connect with people and make a better relationship, and they can charge more, and there's so many benefits to a strong brand. And it's just been fascinating to write the book. So it's worked on the book for probably 2 years.
Yeah.
Launched it last fall, and now I speak about it. And it's the feedback I get when I speak about it is just kind of overwhelming. People are so interested in, like, it's almost like we've been thinking this, or we're not sure if it's right, and now you're talking about it. It seems to make sense. It almost seems so basic, but since no one had really been talking about it, it kind of came out of nowhere, and now it's...
I'm going to, a leading question here, but when you're speaking about it, or someone who's read the book, you talk to them, is it almost, because again, it's geared towards dental practices, and like you said, branding a dental practice like a company.
Right.
Do you get the sense that they almost feel like, oh, wow, okay, you mean it's okay to do that?
There is that. There's actually across the board. There's a lot of different responses. Yeah. One is, there's kind of this kind of awakening almost, or this. I've been thinking about that. Now I almost have permission to do it, or other people are like-minded. But there's definitely this feeling out there that is ready for it. I feel like dentists in the dental industry is kind of ready for this kind of thinking, and no one is I almost feel lucky and fortunate that no one's really talking about it this way, and it's something that I do in my day-to-day, in what I do for companies. So it was kind of a logical progression with now, how can I share that with everyday, dentists and try and share what I know. So it's been great. I mean, all over the board, people come to me, sort of older practitioners who are like, this is kind of cool. I've never really thought this way, to younger ones. I just had this young woman come to me and be like, I have done everything that you've talked about. Almost like, and I think we're going to try to have her on the show.
I was going to say, we should have her on the show.
She was, everything you're saying, I believe in. It was almost like reaffirming. It was really great to hear. I think it was great for her to hear me, and it was great for me to hear her that, okay, this, next wave of dentists is I think, maybe you're going to get it a little faster, but certainly everybody, there's something to learn in it,
So you've taken a lot of the work and things that you've learned from your agency working with dental companies and manufacturers over to the dentist side.
Right.
But going back to that manufacturer and supplier side, I think next week you're headed to the ADA,
right.
the annual American Dental Association meeting. So, you've been going to this thing, I guess, for, well, we said earlier, probably close to 15 years now.
That's right.
So anything in particular you're looking forward to this year?
Well, it's always good. I think as people, we're always interested in connecting with other people, right? So I'm excited to, see friends and colleagues and clients and interact. I always find myself sitting at a lunch table or in an elevator or somewhere with a dentist, and I always ask, where they're from and what they're doing, what do they do for marketing, what do they see, what do they like, why are they here, why did they come, I'm kind of an inquisitive person when it comes to that. So what I'm looking forward to is just staying in and learning more and getting to know some new people and getting to know some old people better. So, and always look forward to, what's new. I think, I'll probably spend some time with, the Pride Institute kind of best-in-class area, which is always, to me, interesting. Each show around the country that we go to, and I think I go to probably 10 a year, 12 a year, they all have a different, interesting, different benefit. And the ADA has, that to me is one of the better things, and definitely look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Well, you talked about the plethora of trade shows you go to every year.
Yeah.
And for the last few years, we've both attended our fair share of trade shows. And I think it's become a bit of a topic of discussion in our industry, the value, or for even a stronger way to put it, the death of the trade show.
Right.
Is the trade show dying? Or maybe the better question, I'm curious, in your opinion, are trade shows still relevant?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we probably could have a roundtable on this, on this podcast of different people who either run trade shows and people who buy space at trade shows and all the different people, and find out what they think. Trade shows are fascinating to me because they're relevant and irrelevant at the same time, right? They're important for that reason I mentioned earlier, to connect with other people, to see new things, to get the CE, to see a lecture, to learn. But are they relevant and necessary at the scale that they are? And I'm not sure that they are. And in sort of the, before the internet and before video and all that, you had to do this.
Right.
You had to sort of go to the big show and do it. Now there's so many other ways to do it. What I see as a bigger trend, and I think it's the start of what I think it will be, is the smaller, more regional. It's maybe 50 or 100 docs in a room, and there's maybe a couple technology companies, and there's a few speakers. And it's a way to sort of do it on a smaller scale, and it's less expensive. You can do it in a day. Maybe it's a one overnight deal, but it's more regional, local. You can drive in. You can bring your team if you want to. But where I really see it going, it's funny, I think it was about a year ago, I sat down. I was, at one of the trade shows was with, I think it was a couple guys in the industry. I think it might have been, who was it? It was Kevin Henry from DPR, and it might have been Dave Hurlbrink, and a couple other people in the industry. People who've been in the industry a long time know it. And we were talking like, okay, what's the future? Jeff Rohde might have been there, who's a dentist out in California. And it was like, what is the future? It's because we all go to these things, and we're all like, I can't believe these things are still hanging around. And we kind of came around to all throwing our opinions in everything. I think it's more, personally, going to be coaching, mentoring, motivational, inspirational type stuff that isn't isn't around now. Still some product stuff, still some technique stuff. Maybe you learn how to do something, and maybe there's some CE. Less product focused, more person focused.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think when that's a very broad question. Are dental trade shows still relevant? And I think it depends on how do we segment the area of relevance, because we know for a fact when it comes to the sales cycle, whether it's a consumable or a technology or a new technology, that dentists are like other consumers.
Yeah.
They find out 70+% of what they need to know on the internet before they talk to someone selling the product.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about relevance of trade shows, the way I look at it is, in the sales process, I think the relevance is declining. But on the other hand, and you touched on this, when we, again, think about that sales cycle and using the internet to find information that we need ahead of time, what I believe that's leading to is still even a stronger need for human connection.
Right.
And that's where the trade show, I think, still has relevance, but it has to evolve. And it may be less of a huge, mostly empty exhibit hall, and more of learning soft skills, learning some new clinical techniques, as you said, some industry sponsorship, but more the human connection, because that's harder to get on the internet.
Right. And I think this is true in any industry, in any world, is that we all belong to different people call it different things, but we all belong to a tribe, right? And so, and we want to connect. The reason we do it is it's in us. We want to be with people who we feel comfortable with, like-minded. And so I think there's that too. And I think the big ones suffer from not as much tight tribe, and whereas if you get that, I think you've hit it.
I think you're exactly right. I think there are, we could probably rattle off some instances where in dental we've seen that, where you get that sense of connection, sense of tribe at a meeting that might have 100 to 1,000 attendees versus 30,000 attendees in a municipal convention center.
Sure, and study clubs do it, right? Study clubs do it at a smaller level, so it's probably somewhere in between that. But I really would mix in a heavy dose of the motivation and the coaching and the
soft skills.
The soft skills,
but it's interesting you mentioned study clubs, because I've got a guest in mind that I want to have for a future show to talk about study clubs, because the study club, from a little bit of my experience and background, we're starting to see an evolution of study clubs expanding beyond geographic boundaries, using technology to have virtual study clubs and to have connections of people across the country, but yet mixing in an annual or semi-annual physical meeting. So study clubs, definitely a topic for Dental Insiders in the future.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So let's say you went back to school.
Don't want to do that.
To be a dentist. All right?
I'm not sure I'm ready for that.
So I'm curious, would you want to go into general practice? Would you want to specialize? And then once you opened your practice, how would you brand your practice?
Sure. So, interesting question. I would probably be a specialist. I don't know why, but I think I probably would. I think I'd rather be really, really, really good at one or two things than kind of good at everything. But that's, I don't know. I'm not really wired to be a dentist. I don't have those skills. I don't have those. So, as far as what I would do to market, that's a pretty big topic right now. I think for a future show we may have some dental practice marketers on our show that can help sort of give some insight. I would probably follow the advice that I give in my book. Quite honestly, I would develop a really strong brand. I would have a really, really strong brand. I would spend some time and energy getting that right, so that way there was no question in the consumer's mind. And I use the word consumer a lot instead of patient. I do that on purpose, right? Because it's important. That's the whole shift, right? The whole shift is stop looking at these people like they're patients. They're consumers.
Right.
You want them to give you money, so start looking at them like consumers. And there's no question in their mind that they know you are whatever you want to be. If you want to be a cutting edge dentist, or you want to be a digital dentist, or you want to be a great customer service dentist, or you want to be fast and peer reviewed, or I don't know whatever it is. I would make sure my brand is strong and clearly communicated, and then I would just use the tools. And these days the tools are mostly internet and video.
Yeah.
So I would be really strong on that. I have a lot of video,
Yeah.
that sort of explained who I was. And I would
Video
do,
tour of your practice.
yeah, I mean all that obviously. And then I would do a lot of really strong reputation, marketing, because I think that's really important. We again treating patients like consumers. If you were going to go out to dinner tonight with your wife and she recommended a restaurant, what was the first thing you do?
You go online.
You go online, you look it up, and you look at a review. You're a consumer of the restaurant.
Yeah.
So a patient moves to town, or they're thinking about changing dentists. What's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to go online. They're going to search. They want to see reviews too. Now, we all know that you can't believe every review, but an overwhelming number of positive reviews is certainly helpful. And that's just the world we live in. In a couple of years, it might not be, but right now it's the world we live in.
Yeah. So, I like to ask this question of every insider that I talk to. What trends do you think will have the biggest impact on the dental industry, let's say in the next several years?
A couple of years? Well, I'd say in the next year or two. One is the group practice, and the corporate dentistry, whatever we call it. Used to be called group practices, then it called DSOs, and then it's corporate dentistry. It's kind of a franchise model. I mean, whatever. That's going to affect. I don't think it's going to take over the industry, but I think it's at some point it'll level out. I think there's still the difference is: do you want to be, if you're a dentist, are you entrepreneurial? Do you want to run your own practice? Do you want to hire people, fire people, run payroll, and do all that stuff? Is it in you? Do you wake up? Do you have a passion for it? And if you do, then you're entrepreneurial. If you don't, then you're just a great clinician, and you sort of stick to that and let somebody else help run the business. I think that'll still shake out because everybody's chasing that, right? I mean, all the dentists are, the key people in the industry, the manufacturers are, everyone, the associations, and everybody is chasing that group because it's such big buying power. So it's affecting it. And the other is Google. Google still is such a big player and can help make or break what you do, and it's kind of an easy thing to do. It's hard and easy at the same time. It's a simple thing that takes some expertise and effort, but
I think it's interesting the way you spoke about the DSOs or the group practices, in that it really depends upon the mindset of the dentist. Do they want to be the president and CEO of their own company? Are they an entrepreneur?
Right.
Or do they really, not to say the entrepreneurs don't want to do this, but they really just want to focus on delivering great care, delivering great dentistry, and leave some of the running a company and management aspects to someone else. And I think that often gets lost in the conversation around DSOs, because sometimes it can quickly turn to, are they quote unquote bad or good?
Right.
And that's not really the question or the conversation.
Right.
The conversation is, what do you envision for your practice now, for your practice in the future, and what gets your blood pumping as a dentist?
Sure. It's not as much as bad or good. It's inevitable. It's here.
Yeah.
So it's like, what does it mean to you? Does it mean nothing, or does it mean something? Is it for you, or is it not? And if it's not for you, then don't worry about it. If it is for you, then have at it.
I think we're just about out of time here, but one thing I did want to note, it's the day that we're recording this happens to be the birthday of two dental insiders that we may talk to in the future.
Who's that?
Dr. Rich Rosenblatt's birthday is today.
Happy birthday, Rich.
Happy birthday, Rich. And strangely enough, he shares his birthday with Dr. Darren O'Brien.
Oh.
So, Dr. Darren O'Brien, happy birthday to you as well.
Yeah.
So, I think
that wraps it up.
Yeah.
I think that's it. We're done.
Are we done?
Thanks for joining us. You're done.
Yeah.
You're Michael Dunn.
I'm Michael Dunn.
And I'm Matthew Petchel. We'll see you next time on the Dental Insiders. Our first guest, so this was sort of our kickoff podcast, but our next podcast will be our first one, and we'll have none other than Dr. Lou Schumann as our guest. He's going to give us his take on the industry, a recap on the Pride Institute's Best in Class Technology Awards, and he's going to tell us how many cavities he has. So it's going to be an exciting show.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
See you next time.
See you.